And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, is a man who's got a great squirrel defense system at his house. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
I'm doing good. All I have is a dog that can't actually catch squirrels, but she sure thinks she can. She does get them out of the yard for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, squirrels and rabbits, not fond of our house either. So
apparently, Kieran, that squirrel is still alive, just chilling in like the Tigers bullpen area. It's still out there, and I guess
hey, look,
that's
it's
really
good
all I have
living.
to
It's good
report.
living
But it
if
is
you
a
can
big
live at
story.
home.
You know, we're here.
Yeah.
We're here to bring you the real news, and that was the story of Tuesday's game, right? Forget 6 scoreless from Jack Flaherty.
Well, I'll tell you what, it made headlines. It got more attention onto the Tigers because you get the push notification on the phone that there's a squirrel on the field.
Why is that? What are we doing? Who cares? Let's talk about
look,
Jack Flaherty. Like Jack Flaherty or something?
we could talk about Jack Flaherty, and actually, it was perfect that he had himself the best game that we've seen from him in a Tiger uniform.
Not in a Tiger uniform, but this year.
This year, okay. Well, I just wanted to see how reactionary we wanted to be. Jack Flaherty in a 3-1 victory today, Tuesday, went 6 innings, 2 hits, 8 Ks, 1 walk, zero runs, obviously. And the number one thing that impressed me, Cody, was I love it when things that we talk about either get corrected or become like a further talking point. And we talked about the fastball after Flaherty's last outing. Fastball was working today. And thus, it's funny how this works out. Thus, everything else tends to work a lot better for anybody, but especially for Jack Flaherty. He had, let's see, I wrote this down, 7 whiffs on the fastball today. Seemed like location-wise, he was able to do pretty much what he wanted when everybody's going to miss occasionally, so this is not me harping. But when he missed, he missed at times when hitters weren't looking to be aggressive. So, quote unquote, get away with it, if you would. Kind of a weird game, balls and strike wise behind the plate, but that's how it goes sometimes. But what did you think from Jack today? Because keep in mind that we literally said like what's the best version of Jack Flaherty? What kind of pitcher is he? Tuesday was kind of that. So what do you think?
Yeah, we definitely saw something a lot closer to the best version of Jack Flaherty. We'll talk about the fastball since that's what we talked about a lot last time. I'm obviously not a stickler. I just am pointing out the facts that like his fastball is a lot better if he's above 92.5 or 93 miles an hour. The fastball was pretty much right in line with his yearly average tonight, but interestingly enough, it had a little bit of different life, a little bit of different action. Even though the velocity was up and down, as low as 91, as high as 94.8, his average induced vertical break was higher. So basically the ball's carrying through the air, riding, giving that rising effect a little bit more. And it was kind of like that all night. So that tells me that's probably why it was more effective. I don't know exactly what he did differently to create that, especially when the velo is very similar and the spin's pretty similar, but you'll take it. Good action on the fastball, and then, yes, the command. Whatever the velocity is, command's going to be important. What the velocity really does for Jack, I think, is make the command a little less important. If you're going to be below 92, you better be pretty pinpoint. Well, tonight, Jack was incredibly pinpoint no matter how hard he was throwing, especially early in the game. A lot of fastballs down in the zone. That's one thing I like about Jack Flaherty. There's kind of an old school nature to him. For as much as we think of him as a swing and miss guy, he throws fastball low and then slider. And then as that game went on, he kind of started expanding up the zone, works the fastball high a little bit. I thought that was pretty good. He said he had actually no feel for his slider, which was interesting. And you see he didn't use it a ton, 25% of the time. The knuckle curve came in handy. All in all, he was just really sharp, and I think location is the biggest reason why he had the command dialed in.
So he had 5 whiffs on the curveball today, and probably most impressive was finishing the game with 11 straight batters retired. And
First inning.
so yeah, and getting out of any sort of traffic like really quickly too early.
Mhm.
So like it from Jump Street, he was on, and now we like it's one of those things that kind of like catches up on you a little bit. 3 straight scoreless outings for Flaherty, is that correct? So like he's he's looking like the number 2. Last time we talked about like is he a number 2? It like
I mean,
we're
that's not correct, but
I'm sorry.
no, he's given up runs in every outing except that no. Anyway, it's not correct.
Okay. Well, I misread
He
it.
gave up 3 last time out.
Okay. Well, regardless, he's put together 3 pretty solid starts, pretty good starts to really good starts in a row now, and now he looks like a guy that, like, I see why he would bet on himself if he's capable of doing this against like a team that is going to try to kind of outmaneuver you at the plate. They're going to try to get on. They're going to try to move over. They're going to try to work you out, and he ended up working out the Giants. So overall, I thought that was as encouraging as I've seen Flaherty in a while.
Yeah, for sure. He got the ERA under 4. It's now 3.94. Funny how we just kind of look at certain things differently. I think I felt worse about Flaherty when there was just a 4 by his name, but now there's a 3, and it's like, oh no, it's all great. No, credit where credit's due. We've talked a lot about Jack, kind of dissected his game, and I'm sure we're gonna keep doing that. He's kind of an interesting pitcher to talk about in that way, but I think encouraging to know that you can still go get 6 scoreless, that his command can still look like that. If he's able to dial in the mechanics and maybe regain a little fastball life, still kind of scary what he could be. Again, he did this on a night where he didn't even really have the slider going.
Wanted to correct the record on what I misread. It's the 3rd straight scoreless start for a Tigers starter. So that is my fault. Late night, tired eyes, take full responsibility for that. But we haven't done like a Jack Flaherty kind of, in the clubhouse update or anything. Like I know like we could say that wins are a pointless stat, but I'm sure if you're the starting pitcher, you probably would like to have that W next to your name in the box score, and then it's still one of the things that gets popped up, statistically, and you get associated with it, whether or not that's an accurate representation of your value to a team. But there was a time where they were not winning games when he was starting. And now he's gotten a couple more in the tally. It looks a lot better than it did. Speaking of things that look a lot better, even if it lacks nuance. How is Jack Flaherty these days in the clubhouse after good starts, recently, and still working it through starts early in the season?
Jack stays Jack, man. He's one of the you hear the never too high, never too low. I mean, that's kind of Jack. I think you can see him wear his emotions on his sleeve a little bit during the game in the heat of competition. After some bad starts, there have been some post-game press conferences where Jack was just very short. The mood's a little tense. But even after a great start, he's still just kind of Jack. He's pretty low key. I think a little bit about that California low key about him.
All right, and we'll talk about the other big headline of the day. But first, a word from our sponsors.
If you're a card collector or you'd like to get into card collecting, may I suggest Arena Club and slab packs, which means that you can rip the packs digitally and, of course, get the card that you want. It's also the most trusted name in the game, and I would rather rip packs these days on my phone than sit next to you and have you grabbing one of my physical packs if I was grabbing one.
Yeah, you don't need me grabbing your packs, because last time you grabbed one, it ended up like this card. So let's not have that, and that's why Arena Club is great. They send them to you in these fancy protectors like this Scout Braun card that we have here, and they'll come safe. They're already graded. Or you could do like I do and just leave my cards in the showroom and never actually see them physically.
Yeah.
But they're safe, protected, and if I want to sell them, I can.
Buy, sell, trade. They offer full transparency, showing every card in the slab pack with the likelihood of pulling each one so you know exactly what's available before you buy. Get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FAL and use code FAL.
So you talk about Jack Flaherty being like California cool. Not everybody on this team keeps it cool, and we'll talk about some of the emotional spectrum that we saw in these two games against the Giants. But what I wanted to start out with was we got the return of Wenceel Perez, and did it take long to make an impact? 3 pitches, and the third one goes over the right field wall. And the reason I bring up the emotional aspect of it is, man, was he pumped up. It was so fun to see, like him back, and then, getting the first home run of the season and his first at bat in the major leagues this season. I'm sure like a back injury is one of those things that's one of the more frustrating ones to come back from, and just like all these other guys, seeing the team succeed without him, I'm sure that's tough as well. But it was nice to see Wenceel back in there, center field, the Javier thing. We'll talk about Javy a little bit in a second. But Wenceel being back, it did to me seem like he's one of those guys that everybody's like always happy for whenever he does something well and good, because it feels like he's just one of the more likable dudes you can have on a baseball field, and it was fun to see.
Yeah, just what a cool moment, right? It kind of made me think of something, an editor said once, which is just like covering a baseball team. You're kind of trying to capture a story. You almost think of the season like a book, and especially at The Athletic, where we don't necessarily write a traditional game story or even write every day. Like, if I worked for a newspaper, it's kind of like, all right, would this make the book? Would this be a moment in time that we're going to remember at the end of the season? And I was like, I think the answer is yes, man. I'm going to write about this one, because this guy, fresh off the 60-day IL, and not just that, but it was the very last day after the last game of spring training, he had to go in and say, man, my back's not right. All his teammates are getting dressed, packing their bags. I saw Wenceel coming out of the doors, slumped, looking sad. I was like, what is going on? Took a day or two until we got the news. His teammates went and got on the plane, headed to the West Coast. It's go time, season. Wenceel got to stay in beautiful Lakeland. Get to rehab your back. That sucks, man. That sucks. And then you're going to miss 60 days. It's not 10, 15 days. You're out 2 months of your season. So it must have felt good for him just to put on that Tigers uniform again, just to step on the field again, and then to be able to be like, I still got this. Mm-hmm. No wonder he was so excited, right?
Yeah, I mean, it did kind of look like also he was like, oh, wait, I don't do anything. I just high five whenever I get in the clubhouse. Because he also hadn't witnessed a home run without a celebratory action, with the Tigers, like obviously last year, with the spear and all that stuff. So like he was like, okay, we're just doing the old fashioned high five thing. Like he had to get there. These are the things people don't talk about. You got to get used to certain stuff when you come back to the team for the first time. And it ended up being like a spark. Riley Green, 4 RBI over the past 2 games. He just continues to, I don't want to say quietly because we're talking about it, but, do his thing.
28 RBIs in 29 games or something. May's going to be the highest RBI total of his entire career. We're also kind of past the point of like RBIs being a big thing, but it does speak to how steady for Riley, who's a streaky hitter over the past 30 games, has been really steady. And he's been that run producer for you. He's been exactly what you need. Helps that he has Glaber, who's always on base in front of him, and some other guys getting on in front of him.
Well, one of the people that you would have thought was going to start to kind of figure into that conversation would have been Matt Vierling, who the other part of the Perez piece is that Vierling has we're officially calling it right shoulder inflammation. Is that correct? And so obviously that's the shoulder that was hurt from the beginning of spring training, and he had just come back. Like I had planned to talk a little bit about Matt Vierling for Monday's episode, but the Scooble thing just kind of like ate everything up, and I was like, all right, well, we can get to it in a couple of days. It's fine. And I guess we're kind of now getting to it, but not in the way that I thought. So I don't know, man. I don't want to do like medical speculation or anything, but if I were to just say there was not one event that occurred, which is what the story was in spring training, and then now they're saying there's also not an event that occurred that caused the inflammation. I just don't have good vibes on that. That's all I'll say. I just don't have good vibes on that.
Yeah. I don't necessarily want to speculate, but I agree. The vibes don't seem good for the prognosis here. There was a ball Monday, hit to center. I think Brisky was on the mound. Guy was scoring, I think, from second. Vierling didn't throw home. And I thought it was a little weird. He probably wouldn't have got the guy. And there was another runner on base. So it gets cut off, and it's like, maybe that's a good decision not to make that throw. But even the throw in was just kind of a little weak. And I was like, all right, whatever. Maybe that's just he's a smarter baseball player than I would be and just knew there was no sense to like force a throw and risk another runner advancing. Yeah, now it's like I think that arm was already hurting, and it does make you wonder, did this arm ever really stop hurting, or was he just obviously trying to get back to the big leagues, fighting through a little inflammation? We'll probably never know the answer to that. We wish the best for Matt Vierling. Hope it's not a long-term thing, but the vibes don't seem great right now. Yeah, probably not a lot else to talk about until we know a little bit more, but for as great as the emotion of seeing Wenceel is, man, kind of deflating. Matt is back for 2 days. You think you're getting to full strength, and then Matt's back on the IL. Yeah. On another emotional swing, Parker Meadows might be back as soon as this weekend. So,
yeah, Parker looks good. I mean, I'm obviously not dialed into every Toledo at bat or whatever, so I don't want to pretend otherwise. But a lot of highlights coming up Parker Meadows' way. I'll say that. So hopefully that issue is resolved or whatever there. But there's, I think, an underrated fallout to the Matt Vierling piece of it that I just want to ask you, Cody. But first, a word from our sponsors.
The weather is warming up, and with that being said, you need to check out what Rhoback is bringing to the table. If you're a golfer, especially, and you're looking for golf shirts that just have the perfect style and also are soft, they're lightweight, and perfect for the summertime, Rhoback is the spot. Of course, FT's hooking you up with a code for 20% off at rhoback.com. That's FOUL on RHOBACK.com for 20% off all shorts, hoodies, polos, and more.
All right, coming back here. Today we saw Javy Baez start at third base, and there's a funny element that we'll get to in a second, but it did kind of give me like a little bit of a thought with the Vierling news, and then Parker coming up. Are we kind of done with the everyday center fielder thing with Javy, just by the very nature of guys coming back? Is there other outfield spot possibilities? I'm just kind of thinking out loud here because right now you feel the need to get the bat in the lineup, and there's obviously these are not apples to apples, but could Javy be this year's Matt Vierling? Where you have infield capabilities, you have center field capabilities. I know they're not the exact same player, but he's hitting better than Vierling ever started a year. So just a thought out there. What this means for what was plus production in center field, but now you're getting your center fielder back, and then another, you just got another, outfielder with center field capabilities as well. So just thought.
Yeah, when Meadows is back, obviously everyday center field for Javy will be out the window. Also, just going to note this, since his 2 home run game, he is 6.435. That's a 194 average. Slowing down a little bit since that magical game. I am very interested to see how he will be used, because I would think it would make sense to play him a lot at shortstop, but the Tigers seem to love them some Trey Sweeney, just playing as much as possible. So we'll obviously see Javy at third. Maybe a little short, maybe a little center. But I think you're going to want Parker Meadows in there just about as much as possible. The question that has kind of been thrown around but not really answered, was there any interest in Javier Báez playing a corner spot? Now with Wenceel here, I'm not sure you need that, but you don't have Vierling now, so that does kind of open up a little room. It would maybe be kind of more to learn. You talk about like the angles off the bats being weird and such, but I'd be kind of interested in a little Javier Báez right field. Why not? He looked so good in center, in a pinch. I guess that's all to your point, Kieran. Yeah, I think Javi's probably going to move around a lot, right? That's the only way to get him real regular playing time, or I guess especially with Vierling going back to the IL, maybe he just plays a lot of third, maybe almost everyday third base work could be possible.
In short action, he was a plus defender at third base this year. So for the record, but yeah, again, you don't really have a pure third baseman really. Right now it's just how the roster has been constructed, and with the right-handedness, and I'll tell you this. I at this point, I'm just going to trust that instinctually he can play right field. That's that. I'll just
I can't think of a reason why not.
Yeah, that's kind
of
the
angle is different. I think Javier Báez is worried about angles.
I think he can get the angles down. I think he can figure it out. I think he could. I think he can figure it out. And his arm has looked good too. Like I don't know how it measures out, but his arm has looked good as well. So not any like real concerns there. But he's in the news this week because he got himself ejected from the game on Monday after what was everybody knows it was just a terrible called third strike by Phil Cuzzi behind the plate. And it escalated in sort of interesting fashion between the two of them. Little talk, a turn back. And then right as AJ's trying to get in between, he just, got to work on that 60-yard dash time, AJ, because he was trying to get in there before the ejection could occur. Couldn't do it. Had himself a nice conversation as well. Did not get ejected because AJ has yet to live up to the promise that he said on this podcast that get ejected early in the season. And so saying haven't forgotten there. But yeah, just like a really charged moment early in the day on Memorial Day, first game of the MLB slate, and Javy Baez is showing a lot of emotion.
I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably seen what happened, so I don't know that we really need to recap it. Javy was still pretty heated post-game, right? You may have also seen some of his comments. We had a couple F-bombs mixed in there. Basically said Phil Cuzzi, he told him that's not an effing strike, and Cuzzi told him, get out of here, don't point. Looking at the video, Javy didn't really point, but he was gesturing with his arm. Javy said, he wanted to talk to him. He wanted to ask him a question, and Cuzzi just wasn't having it. And then he tossed him. Looking on the video, it does seem like he kind of turned back and maybe said something else, even as his body was heading toward the dugout. And that's when Cuzzi tossed him. But yeah, Javy was heated, and I tend to agree, like veteran player, veteran umpire. I don't know. You throw an F-bomb at the umpire, you probably risk getting tossed. But that was a pretty bad call. Javy said if he just would have told me, I missed it, I would have been fine with that. I would have moved on. I understand he's human. He's not perfect. But he also said, it wasn't about the call. It was about the competition, and it was about the way he treated me. He said, don't treat me like an animal, which is pretty strong phrasing. Yeah, I didn't really think there was any reason to run him from the game, but I also get All right, you throw an F-bomb at the umpire, you risk that happening. The AJ Hinch standpoint, we joke on here a lot about AJ getting tossed. I think he is right that there's no real reason to get ejected just to get ejected, right? That's something that older school managers maybe from time to time did for show. And if you actually look at their career ejections, other than like Bobby Cox, most like Jim Leland, he got ejected plenty, but he didn't get ejected as much as you probably think he did. So yeah, like AJ talks a lot about the importance of being there to manage the game. He talked about this when we had him on Tiger Territory in the offseason. I thought it was a really good answer. Like, he gets paid to manage. He doesn't get paid to sit inside, especially on a team like the Tigers where there are a million moving parts. It makes sense. I did ask AJ post-game, like, did you think you were going to get tossed before you went out there? Because I thought he was going to, because it was a balls and strikes situation. Even if he wasn't arguing the call and he was just protecting his player, it's still the easiest way to get tossed is balls and strikes. Umpires just don't tolerate that. And AJ looked pretty heated too when he was out there. We've seen him go out there before and just like talk. You know, I thought he got pretty animated. I guess he didn't say any magic words or anything like that. So I have no problem with AJ, you know, not getting tossed. Probably the right call on his part. Still defended his player. Good thing Joey Cora was there to restrain Javy Baez and Gleyber Torres. Man,
using all that body weight to restrain Javy there. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm of the opinion, like, I understand all the elements here that led to that circumstance. Obviously, I understand Javy being pissed. I understand Cuzzy being like, "Look, dude, like, this is my game. I'm calling the game. I'm going to give you a little bit, but once you do like the third sentence, like, this rule number one, you can't argue this. All right." And then I understand AJ not getting ejected, but also protecting his player, and Cuzzy knowing that, like, hey, this is not a 2 ejection worthy moment. So, like, everything kind of, I understand all the elements of play. Real quick, why don't we end with this? Not like anything huge that I wanted to discuss, but I did want to just make note of something. We're still not seeing a lot of Jake Rogers. Still not seeing a lot of Jake
very
Rogers.
surprised how little we're seeing it. The crowd that was all for Dylan Dingler, catcher number 1, you guys were right. Because I was wrong. Right now, he's getting all the playing time, man. I am stunned how little Jake Rogers has been playing since his return.
So if I have the numbers correct, Dingler just played his 41st game of the season. So I was like, all right, well, Rogers was catching a lot last year. So, you know, today is May 27th. When did Rogers play his 41st game of last year with the Carson Kelly timeshare? That was June 11th was when Jake Rogers reached his 41st game. So Dingler way ahead of pace of Rogers last year. It seems to me, I mean, he did have a ribby in Monday's game. So it seems to me that this is a bat thing. That's the only bat thing, or Jake's pretty sore. I mean, maybe it's as simple as that, but it is something worth like monitoring. Just like, how often is Dingler going out there? Because it does not seem like a timeshare right now. It seems like Rogers is essentially in mop-up duty right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you pointed it out off air, Kieran. If it was really just about the bat, you could always DH Dingler and start Jake behind the plate. The Tigers aren't really in a circumstance where they need that. Their offense is better than it was last season. You're trying to get Colt Keith playing time, and which, you know, means you got to use the DH with probably one of Gleyber, Torque, or Colt most nights. But, you know, we saw Jake Rogers like DH a ton last year, which was always weird. So it's very doable. Dylan's doing a great job, so props to him, putting himself in, as we talked about, maybe all-star conversations. There's a lot of playing time for a catcher, though, so I'm interested to see if it's going to continue this way. AJ talked a little about wanting to ease Jake in, but, you know, Jake's been up for a minute now, and he's barely played. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, Kieran, real quick, I just want to give some flowers to Chase Lee. Chase Lee, we've talked about his story, very inspirational. Really like him, really big Chase Lee fan. Be honest, I wasn't necessarily expecting him to come up and just shove right away in the majors. Chase Lee's pitched 11 innings for the Tigers, and he's only given up 2 earned runs, 1.26 ERA. He's been used in mop-ups. He's been used in leverage. He's been used in multi-inning situations. Win a couple innings here Tuesday night. Just really impressed. He's handled more left-handed batters than I would have guessed. Really impressed with what Chase Lee has brought to this bullpen. And I know I did say, kind of thought the Tigers maybe should have optioned him instead of Gunther over the weekend. So maybe I'm just in a cold streak with some of my takes because Chase Lee's killing it right now.
He is killing it. And but you know, you feel good about these 2 wins. There's still 3-1 wins, man. These are close games that every decision, you know, speaking of not getting ejected, every decision and every at bat and every like guy on the field kind of mattered there, and getting Chase to get to Vest obviously was really crucial to get yourself a series win, especially when I don't want to say you emptied the bag, but you used a lot of the bag on Monday. So that, you know, just an overall well-oiled machine the Tigers have been so far this week. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. We'll talk about that and talk about the Kansas City upcoming series later in the week. Want to thank everybody for listening. Follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran_Steckley. Pod page is at Tiger Territory _ YouTube, Instagram, Apple, Spotify. You guys know the deal. Subscribe, rate, review. We appreciate all of you. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.